This has become a familiar scene. Canadians lining up to get their COVID vaccines at immunization sites, pop-up clinics, or even in their cars. It's a moment hard to imagine a year ago. But back then, a select few did roll up their sleeves for science, the first in the world to do so. We talk a lot about those clinical trials, but rarely do we hear about the people behind the numbers. So tonight, we wanted to do just that. Tom Chivers joined the Oxford AstraZeneca trial last June in London. He received 2 doses and has had to take weekly PCR tests at home ever since. And Kristen Choi signed up last summer for the Pfizer-BioNTech trial in Los Angeles. She had 2 doses and recently went back for a 3rd, this one part of a new study on variants of concern. Tom and Kristen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Kristen, I'm thinking back to the beginning of a trial for a vaccine and how much uncertainty there is at that point. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous when I joined the trial last summer. I was a part of the Pfizer trial here in the United States. But I think that at that time, it felt like it was really important to be a part of the science of finding a solution to this pandemic. And because I am a nurse and a researcher myself, I knew that there was a very high bar for safety and ethical treatment of research subjects. And so in that sense, I also felt comfortable being a part of the study.
And Tom, what about you?
Well, I wish I could be so noble. To me, it felt like I was a free shot at getting a vaccine several months before everyone else, right? And I don't know. I'm from a scientific family. Both my parents are doctors, and I'm a science writer. I'm used to sort of doing this stuff, and so I just figured all the safety stuff was probably out of the way long before I got anywhere near it. So I figured it was almost certainly safe, and I was going to get a vaccine 6 months ahead of everyone else, and I'd also feel good about myself for helping out with science. So there seemed no downsides as far as I was concerned.
Well, good for you for being honest about your self-interest. Now, the way these work, this double-blind study, neither of you knew whether you actually had the vaccine or a placebo. Tom, recently you found out you did indeed get the vaccine. What was that moment like?
Honestly, it was pretty cool. I was hanging out with some friends and got an email saying you can now unblind yourself. And so I went and unblinded myself and found, I'd had the real thing. But I don't know, on one level, right, I see a lot of my friends being really excited about, I've had the vaccine, I'm safe now. And I've never felt super personally scared about COVID because I've always felt I'm still relatively young despite the grey hair, and will probably be all right if it happens. I've never felt super personally scared, but I do think this is great. This means I am now less likely to be putting my family at risk, putting other people at risk, and so that was genuinely exciting for me. I was pleased with that.
Now, Kristen, when you had the 2nd shot, and you've written about this, you got some pretty severe symptoms, including a fever, I think, higher than any fever you'd ever had. That was obviously a worrying moment for you.
Yeah, I had quite a few side effects after the 2nd dose, which we know is common for a lot of people now as more and more folks are getting it. I had a fever, chills, nausea, headache, pretty much every symptom you could. And even though I was blinded at the time, and it was a little bit concerning when it happened, it did also make me suspect that I had gotten the active vaccine. And that came as a huge relief. After I got the 2nd dose and had those side effects, I watched my whole family get COVID, friends get COVID. In LA, where I live, the pandemic really got out of control back in November and December. And I was officially unblinded in December, found out that I got the real vaccine, and it was a huge relief. And I felt so fortunate to have had that protection when, pretty much everyone else around me didn't.
Now, Kristen, as we know, you're a nurse, you're a researcher, you have this very science-based, pragmatic view of the trial and the vaccine. But you're seeing another side of it as well. I mean, you're involved in a vaccine clinic in Los Angeles today. Tell me about the kind of interactions you have with people, the kind of questions they have, the uncertainty they have about getting the shot.
Sure. So yes, I'm here in LA today helping to give COVID vaccines. Today we're giving all of them, all 3 of them. And, I would say on the whole, most people who come in to get these vaccines are just thrilled. They are super excited. In many cases, they've been waiting and hoping to get one and just are so excited to be here getting it. That being said, though, there are people that do have questions and concerns. I've been a little surprised by how many people get to the point of making an appointment and coming in, and then they're still not sure when they sit down. And so I try really hard to be honest with people, to talk them through what to expect, and make sure that all their questions are answered before they do get the vaccine.
Tom, you had the AstraZeneca shot, and here in Canada now, where, in the news, there are stories about the link between that shot and blood clots. Very, very low risk, but still concerning. What would you say to people who are hesitant about getting AstraZeneca?
I mean, it's an incredibly hard question to answer because you don't want to tell people that they're worrying about nothing. But on the other hand, you kind of do want to tell people they're worrying about nothing. Like the risk is fantastically low. It seems to be a real thing, but then everything you do in life has some risk, and the risk of getting a blood clot from taking the AstraZeneca seems to be many thousands of times lower than the risk of getting a blood clot from, I don't know, getting pregnant, or certainly than having COVID, or taking the contraceptive pill or anything like that. And my wife got vaccinated the other day, and they told her that it's about the same risk as getting hit by a bus on the journey to the vaccination centre, and we're not, as humans, naturally brilliant at assessing what different risks are, and what risks we've heard a lot about we're more likely to think are more dangerous than risks that are actually high risk. But I do think it's just really important to remember that it's not going to happen to you, almost certainly, and your risk of getting COVID is far greater, and it's much better to get the vaccine, whatever vaccine is offered, and take that and be happy to have it.
I think you have exactly captured what health professionals are saying here for the most part in Canada. But Kristen, speaking of health professionals, one of the interesting things I think you've seen is some maybe surprising level, I don't know if it's surprising, of hesitancy among nurses. That's something you want to look into.
Yes, absolutely. I'm doing some research right now on vaccine hesitancy among nurses and other healthcare workers. And we know that there are a lot of healthcare workers out there, including nurses, other support staff who work in hospitals, housekeepers, patient transporters, et cetera, who might not have gotten the vaccine yet. And research is showing that those rates of uptake are a little bit lower. The good news is that is improving every day. And, I think that when we think about outreach and addressing hesitancy issues, it's really important that we not neglect the healthcare provider community, because there are still groups of people out there with questions and concerns.
Well, it's really interesting to speak with both of you who decided to get involved in these trials a long time ago. And thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.